welcome everybody to a brand new semester of IS50A Game Development. This lecture here is going to get you going in Unreal Engine. So launch the Epic Game Store, click on the Unreal Engine tab, click on the Library tab, and launch whatever the latest version of Unreal Engine you have. I have got 4.27, 5.0, and 5.2 installed. I'm just going to click on the latest 5.2, and after a delay, you will see something like this come up. These are all my old projects. We're going to make a new project. So go ahead and click on Games, click on Third Person. That's probably the best template to work with. Target platform is going to be desktop, maximum quality, starter content on. Ray tracing you turn on or off. I've kind of gone back and forth on that. Maybe I'll turn it on this semester. See how it goes. I'm going to name this project Fall 2023, and I'm going to save it into my Unreal Projects folder. So Unreal projects do eat up a lot of hard drive space, so make sure that you put it on a drive that's got a substantial amount of hard drive space available for it. And we're going to do a blueprint project, not a C++ project. And we're going to hit create. And then it will take a little bit of time. And it will launch a new world. So a template is kind of like starter code. So it starts off with like a game already ready for you to play. And a third-person one, I prefer that one over the first-person template. The first-person template is like for a first-person shooter. The trouble is it doesn't have any animations. All it is a kind of a disembodied arm that like shoots things. And so if you ever want to learn how to work with like skeletal animations and things like that, you really want to do the third-person blueprint. Now, for your own project, you might want to use the first-person template or the vehicle template if you want to have a driving game or something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording now while it's launching this template for the first time. It's got 3,800 shaders to go. And we're back. So it took about a minute or so to load everything. And what we're looking at here is the starter world for Unreal Engine 5. And if we hit play, we can see what kind of game, such as it is, that we have right now. So we hit the green triangle up there. Click inside of the screen. You can use the mouse to move it around. Look at that frame rate. It's buttery smooth. And I can walk around like this. I can hit space to jump. And that's about it as far as the game goes. There's these blue boxes here that have physics enabled. I can leap from place to place, and that is the whole thing. So not a very good game. Clicking doesn't do anything. So there's the game such as it is that we have to start with. Okay. In order to get out of play mode, you hit escape. You hit escape, and you are back out. Now, first thing we're going to learn how to do is how to fly around inside of this world. If you want to look at something, you want to like kind of get up and look at it, you're going to have to learn how to do that. So the way that we navigate around inside of the world is by holding down the right mouse button. So if you hold down the right mouse button and look around with your mouse, then it rotates the camera around, and you can look anywhere you want. If you want to move while you're holding down right mouse click, you can use WASD. W is forward, S is backwards, A is left, D is right, and it strafes. So if I want to, for example, circle around this thing here, I can use the mouse to keep looking at it and use A to strafe left or D to strafe right. Q goes downwards, E goes upwards. So W, S, A, D. I'm holding down right mouse click right now. W, S, A, D, Q, E. And with that, you can basically just kind of like fly around, look at anything. If you use mouse wheel, if I mouse wheel down, now I'm crawling at a snail's pace. If I mouse wheel up, you will see I go faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. So holding down right click and mouse wheeling allows me to control the camera speed. It's still pretty fast. And slow it down a little bit. It's still a little too fast. Still a little too fast. Yeah, that's about right. Okay. That feels pretty good to me. And that is how we can walk around inside of the world. We're in editor mode. We're building the game world right now. We're not playing it. Again, in order to play the game, in order to test out your game, you can do what's called play in editor, P-I-E, Pi. And you can hit that, and then you click inside of the graphics window, and you can play your game When you're done, hit escape to get back out. So we're going to do a little orientation of the Unreal Editor interface right now. What I'm actually going to recommend to you guys is you don't use the default Unreal 5 interface. I recommend resetting it to Unreal Engine 4. So if you click on the window menu here and you go down to load layout and you choose UE4 classic layout, that's a little bit easier for new students to work with. You give up a little bit of screen real estate, but I feel like it's a little bit easier just kind of to see where everything is. So go to the window, go to load layout, go to UE4 classic layout. Do you have to download UE5? What's your alternative? You want to use UE4 instead? You can't find that? Are you in Unreal Engine 4 or 5? 5? Under Window, Load Layout. You might need to scroll down if it's off the edge of the screen, and then go to UE4 Classic Layout. And if you do that, you'll see the content browser appears down here at the bottom of the screen. And that's useful because this shows us kind of like all the stuff that we have to play with. We checked starter content when we made the project, and so that gives us all sorts of things like these cool materials of like grass and like gold and glass and things like that. So so if you don't see layout, you could probably just work with the default one, I guess. I don't know. Okay, so we're going to do a little tour, though, of the interface. And we're going to kind of start here on the left-hand side. We're going to work our way clockwise around the interface. And then at the end of it, you'll be given an assignment. Your first assignment is going to be to make Frosty the Snowman, or one of the other non-copyrighted snowmen of your choice. So the left-hand side here, we have what's called the Place Actors palette. And these things can be dragged into the world. What I want you to do right now is to click on the Basic Shapes palette right here. And you can see there's cube and sphere and cylinder and cone and plane. Not a whole lot of options, but it's all we need in order to make a snowman. So the way that this works is you are going to left-click and drag one of these things out. And you will see that the cube or sphere or cylinder or whatever it is that you pull out appears in the world wherever you drag it. And when you drag it out, you should see these three arrows here. There is a red arrow, a blue arrow, and a green arrow. In fact, if you look at the bottom left corner of the screen right here, you can see what those things correspond to. X is the red direction, green is the Y direction, and blue is the Z direction. So you can see the Z direction is up. Okay, so Z is up in Unreal Engine. It's not that way in every editor. If you've used Maya before, I think what you said. Every engine seems to have its own concept of what is forward, what is left, what is up. In Unreal Engine, X is this direction, Y is this direction, and Z, or Z as the Brits say, is this direction. Okay, up and down. So if you don't see these arrows here, you can click on this widget right here. And with the object selected and that selected, you will see arrows appear. And you can use that to move the object around in the X, Y, and Z direction. In fact, when we move things in Unreal Engine, we almost always move them in one or sometimes two axes. We almost never move it in three axes. The reason for that, if I try moving it in three axes, which I can do by clicking on that little ball in the center, is it becomes very impossible to control the depth into the screen. So you move things left and right, and you can see this thing is kind of like flying up and flying down. It's very hard to actually, like if I try to place this thing on top of that cylinder over there, I can't do it. It's just too annoying. So if I'm trying to put this box, this white box here onto that cylinder right here, using the little ball in the center there, I can't do it. It's just too much. So what I do instead is I use the arrows. So I'm going to click and drag on the green arrow and kind of slide it over that way. Okay. As long as you're clicking and dragging, it only moves in the Y direction. As long as you're clicking and dragging on the green arrow, it only moves in the Y direction. Very nice. And if I click and drag on the red arrow, it'll only move in the X direction. Very nice. Okay, so you just click. I usually just click on these one at a time. Okay. And then when I want to place it down, I can click and drag on the blue arrow and drop it down. Now, in order to get a perfect snug fit, there's actually a shortcut for that, which is the end key, E-N-D, end key on your keyboard. If you hit that, it snaps the box down to be a perfect flush fit on the cylinder. It's a lot easier to do it that way than sitting there and like, all right, you know, you're like sitting there, you're like measuring it out. You're like, is that it? No, there's still a thing. You know, and you're like sitting there like, you know, way easier just hit end and it snaps down. So very simple. You just drop objects on the ground that way. So everybody, please take a moment now and just drag out a cube and like place it somewhere in your world, and drag out a sphere and, you know, just move it around somewhere and drop it on the ground. Drag out a cylinder and just make a little garden of shapes. I don't know. And just kind of like get a little bit of experience about dragging things out from the palette over here and placing them in the world. And remember, right mouse click, if you hold that down, it allows you to rotate and look around, and WASD moves. And so you can kind of like go and kind of like get a different angle on things, make sure, like if you're looking at it from one angle, like it might look fine. You know, that looks lined up, but then you go to the side and you see it's not. So it's really important to kind of like look at things from different sides. Okay, that looks pretty good. Good. All right. So give me a thumbs up after you guys have successfully moved a couple objects from the palette into the game world, and then use the translate tool, that's what this thing here is called, to move objects around. It's this one right here if it's not selected. So give me a thumbs up once you guys got that. I'm going to pause the recording in the meantime. Okay, second thing you need to know about objects is how to rotate them. So we've got a few different tools up here. This is the select tool, which you just use to select things. This is the translate tool. Translating means not like translating French to English or something like that. Translating means moving. So you can use the translate tool to move things around. Then there is the rotate tool. And the rotate tool rotates things. And so you can, if you want to adjust that ramp there. By the way, if you want to delete something, click on an object, hit delete. I don't usually use the select tool too much because you can just select things with, you know, the other tools selected. And oh, do you want to know how I did that? I held down Shift and it moves the camera with me when I move the object. Kind of cool, huh? And so you just do that and then just be like, yep, it's lined up, and there we go. So the rotate tool, if you rotate the sphere, well, you're probably not going to see very much, right? But like the cone here. So you can see you can rotate it around the y-axis here. You can rotate it around the z-axis here. It doesn't really show very much. You can rotate it around the x-axis this way, and you can combine these things together to make whatever kind of rotation you want. Okay, so you make objects point in any direction that you want via rotation. Okay. So finally, the last tool that we usually work with is called scaling. And scaling is not something we actually do that often. Because it kind of screws things up when you scale them. But if you're just like making like, you just like want to quickly like make a little castle or something like that, you can do something like this. You can like drag out the cube and then move it, snap it down, and then select the scale tool, and then you kind of like drag it out like that. This scales it in one direction, this scales it in the other direction, and this scales it in the other direction. And so you can make the object as big or as small as you want. So I'm going to make a little narrow wall here, like a little fortification, and pull it up a little bit and hit end to snap it down. And if I'm just like kind of blocking out a level, if I'm just trying to get an idea of the flow of the level, I might do this. This is called gray boxing or white boxing sometimes. Where you're just kind of like, I'm just gonna put a couple bounding boxes out here, and maybe make a little rough bridge. In general, though, we don't use scaling very often because it makes everything kind of look dumb. So here's a little wall. If I want to duplicate this wall, watch this. I'm going to hold down Alt, and it duplicates it. So if I have one wall, now I've got two that are exactly the same size, that are lined up on exactly the same. You see that? They're on exactly the same, the X coordinate, just the Y coordinate's a little bit different. And so you can use this to like make a little bridge, or like make a house or something like that. Alt drag, rotate this, drag it over like that, and not quite big enough. Let's make it a little bit bigger. If you guys are wondering how I'm switching through these things so quickly, W is the translate tool, E is the rotate tool, R is the scale tool. So remember, R is for scale, not rotate. R is for scale. So you make it a little bit bigger, snap it down, a little smaller. Too small. Not exactly lining up right, is it? Now this brings me to a point where, like, see how that's like, it's perfectly lined up on one side, but it's not on the other. So over here in what is called the details panel, let me hide my face for a second. Over here in the details panel, here's the details panel, you can see the scale of things. And so the scale, that's in the Y direction, right? Or it's in the Z direction. Oh, because I rotated it. You can see I can like edit this directly. And I can actually edit these numbers and like put in a very precise, sort of number in there to get it exactly lined up the way that I want it to be. And then I can turn off snapping to grid. Just get it perfectly lined up. See, it's not quite exactly lined up here, so I'm going to make it a little bit narrower. Check on the other side. And you can spend all day long getting all these things just exactly lined up with each other. Still got a little bit of a lip there, but I'm not going to because it's annoying to get everything just perfectly lined up like that. But there you go. So I got a little house here now. This is my starting location. You can move that too if you want. So if I hit play, I now start inside of this little building. You can see the ramp over here has been rotated. And there we go. So W is translate, where you can move things. E is rotate, where you can rotate things. And you can rotate it again in any of the axes. Control Z is undo, in case you're wondering. And then R is to scale. So R is to scale. So you make things bigger or thinner or wider or whatever. And that is basically all you need to know for your homework assignment today. So your homework assignment is going to be making a snowman. Oh, no, there's a couple other things. We need to tell you how to get materials on it as well. So down here in the content browser, let me start from the top here, the content folder here. There is a folder called starter content that gives you some stuff to work with. And inside of starter content, there is a folder called materials. And you can drag any of these materials onto an object and it will give it that material. So for example, if I wanted this ramp here to be made out of glass, I could search for the glass material and I could drag it on top of, and I'm going to let go. I'm dragging it with the left mouse click and I let go, and now the ramp is made of glass. Kind of cool, right? That's neat. There, that's made of glass. And that's made of glass. And that's made of glass. And now, when I play the game, all this stuff's glass. You can see the cool reflections on it. You got your refraction and reflection going on. Kind of cool looking. So that ramp there is now a glass ramp. Simple as that. Looks kind of trippy, actually. So, do you guys understand? So if you want to apply a material to an object, you just browse over to the materials folder, and if you want the ground to become grass, you just drag that onto the ground. Now, you can see why scaling is stupid. So this floor here has been scaled up 35 times, and so if you put a grass texture or any texture material onto the floor, it looks terrible because it has been zoomed in 35 times or so. And it just looks like something out of the 1990s, right, as far as graphics quality goes. So, yeah, concrete tiles, none of these things are really going to look very good. Basic wall is white, at least it's just a plain white. Basic floor, I don't know. It's okay, I guess. Yeah. So you can drag these materials out over different objects and make them not look like graph paper at least. But you can see if you like drag like brick over this thing, it looks terrible. It looks terrible because the thing has been scaled up so much. Like when you click on this thing's been scaled up 12 times. So if we set the scale back down to 1, and 1, and 1, you can see that this whole platform over here is actually just originally a 1 by 1 by 1 wall. And on that, the bricks look okay. I mean, they're not great, but they look okay. But when they scale it out that much, just everything gets all stretched and it looks terrible and nobody likes it, right? So let's put some asset platforms on there or something. I don't know. Just make it a nice generic white color. You can't see tiling if it's white. Make it look nice and whoa, what happened there? The heck? Good job, Unreal Engine. Okay. Alright. What happened with that? It just suddenly spazzed out. Okay. Let's get some basic colors up in here. It's nice primary colors or something. There. It's looking a little better. There. No more looking like it's graph paper. So when we play the game now, it's a little bit more professional already, right? A little bit more professional. Space to jump. So again, you can drag things out from here. If you want to drag a light out, for example, you can drag out a point light here. And then you can do things like use the translate tool to move the light around, to rotate it. I don't think rotating is going to do anything now. And scaling it, which again isn't really going to do anything. It's just a light. So just the only thing that really matters is its location and brightness. Okay. So let me continue our tour. So over here we got our palette, and there's different things on the palette you can switch from. Like there's different lights. Like we'll do spotlights probably at some point in the future. Rectangular lights, point lights, distant, directional lights. Basic shapes. We'll go into like blocking volumes and things like that at a later date. But basically, for all these things, it works the same way. Like if you want to add a blocking volume is something that stops you from walking through it. Like in Pokemon, they have like these hedges that like stop you from walking through it. So if I put this blocking volume right here on the ramp, I don't know if you guys can see that. When I go up to it to walk through it, it's just gonna stop me. So you ever seen a video game in which they have invisible walls? The latest Borderlands game, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, has invisible blocking volumes everywhere, and it drives me crazy. You can just drag those things out. But the main things you're going to need to know for today is just here on the Shapes tab. Here is the preview of your game. You can see what your game's going to look like. Up here you can play your game. Up here you can select between moving, rotating, and scaling objects. You can turn on or off snapping to grid. Snapping to grid means moves in like every 10 centimeters at a time. I usually leave that on unless I get into a situation like this, where you know, it's having issues lining everything up properly, and it's still not, and that's still going to bug me. Anyway, okay. All lined up on one side. Okay. Okay, so moving around our tour of Unreal Engine, on the right-hand side here, we've got the what's called the World Outliner. And the World Outliner has a list of every single object in the world. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. A lot of the interface in Unreal Engine is customizable however you want. So you can make things bigger, smaller, in basically any direction. You can rip off almost every tab. So for example, the details tab, I can rip that off and put it down here if I wanted. And then when I click on a cube, you can see the details are here now instead of over here. One of the things I do like to do is I like to rip off the details tab and put it next to the outliner, like that. So I can click on the world outliner, or I can click on details. It gives me a little bit more room on the right-hand side here to deal with. So what is the world outliner? The world outliner is a list of every single object that I have in the world. Everything that's not saved, by the way, has an asterisk, which brings me to my next point. Save often. In Unreal Engine, it crashes a lot. And there are certain things you can do that will almost reliably guarantee crash Unreal Engine 5. So one of the worst things you can have is something like in the world, and then it crashes, and like it's partly saved, like some things are referring to the things in the world, but the world itself doesn't know about it, and then just all sorts of just havoc and chaos and madness will ensue. So one thing I want all of you guys to get into the habit of is save all. Not save, save all. If you just hit save, that's cool. But if you have assets in here or something that have been modified, like if I came in here and like messed with the glass asset or something like this, and I hit save on the level, it does not necessarily, I think I might actually have it set to save all, but it doesn't necessarily, yes, has it been saved? No. And so you want to get into the habit of Control Shift S, not Control S, Control Shift S. That saves everything in your project. And so if you do that, then everything gets saved, and that is life. So Control Shift S is exactly what you want most of the time. So the World Outliner will show you the things that are not saved yet. And also it can allow you to jump to any spot in the world. So we have a fairly small world right now. We can just kind of fly around with our camera. But when you start developing worlds and the worlds start getting big, you don't want to have to just fly everywhere. You know, you want to teleport. And so you can double click on any of these objects on here, and it will teleport you to them. So right now the names are not very useful, unfortunately. You have static mesh SM underscore quarter cylinder 1, quarter cylinder 12, quarter cylinder 11. Not very good names. When I work on projects, I'll do things like click on this guy here and hit F2 to rename it, and this will be like house. Yes, that's on. House wall left. All right, lefter. Let's try that again. And then I can click on this guy here, and he is going to be called house wall right. And I'm hitting F2 to rename these things, by the way. F2 is a pretty universal shortcut to rename things. Another way you can rename things, by the way, is to click and then wiggle the mouse a little bit. So if you click and like wiggle the mouse, that's another shortcut for renaming things. It works in Windows too. Click on an icon, click on the text on the icon, shake your mouse a little bit, and it will go into edit. It's kind of cool. And this will be like house roof, something like that. And then we will, again, save all. And then later on, if I ever am like way over here in Skull and Mass or something like that, I can just be like, oh, teleport me to house roof, the camera, you know, in the game editor. And you can just very quickly fly around inside of the world using the world editor that way. You can also see that you can organize things into like folders. And so I can make a little folder here. New folder. And this folder, F2, is going to be called house, my house, whatever. And I'm going to drag these objects into it like this. House wall left, click and drag. And now I can hide the entire house or show the entire house all at once. It's very useful if you're trying to like get a look at all the contents on the inside of it. And again, it's not saved, so Control-Shift-S, save all. Normally I do this with a keyboard, but I'm doing it with the mouse so you guys can actually see what it is I'm clicking on. And so, yeah, using the world outliner, you can just hide the entire group or show it again and double-click on individual pieces of it to teleport to those parts of the house. So, cool stuff. So, yeah, that's the world editor. There's a lot of things that are in the world that don't actually have a physical presence. Like this wall here has a physical presence. But there are things like the exponential height fog that you'll see an icon for them just sort of like out in the world somewhere. I don't even know where this is in relation to... There it is. It's like way down below the world. Or like the skylight, which kind of represents the light coming from the clouds. Or, you know, that's the sun, essentially. Like, these things don't... Like, if I move the sun, right, you don't see any change in the shadows, right? This icon isn't the sun. It just sort of, like, it sort of represents the sun. But you could rotate it. If you rotate the sun, you can see the shadows change. You can also see the colors change colors. It's pretty cool. So you can actually rotate the sun and, you know, change the mood of your game quite dramatically. A game set at sunset is a quite different game than that set at noon. And you can rotate the sun as well, so the direction of the shadows of the sun change as well. So you can do something like that, and then rotate the sun, simulating dawn and dusk and things like that. It's pretty cool stuff. So you might see there's just a bunch of icons right here, and they represent different things, like the light coming off the clouds, the fog in the world, the graphics up here, and things like that. And so they're not physical objects like these walls here or whatever, but they sort of represent things like the fog in the level. And so, like, if you were to click on the fog thing here, the world outliner, again, it's like way down here, like way below the world. If you click on the details tab, then you'll see all of the options for actually changing the fog in the world. So when you click on something like the sun, which is called directional light, which I guess I could change the name of that to the sun, right? And I can change the name of exponential height fog. I can change the name of that to the fog if I want. When you have these things selected, if you go to the details tab, then you can see all of the details for the sun or for the fog or whatever. So for example, if we click on the sun, click on the sun and go to details, we could do things like add light shafts. And we could do things like atmosphere sunlight. There you go. Nothing now. Cast shadows on clouds. Turn that off. Yeah. Last cloud shadows. Like, there's all sorts of really neat options you can do. How bright is the sun? Let's make it 100. Right? It is super bright now. My eyes are hurting staring at the intense sunlight here. Or we can turn the sun down, and now it's kind of a gloomy day. So again, the way that you adjust all these kind of global things for like the sun, the fog, things like that is, it's actually much brighter than it was. Let's put it back at 3. Is you sort of go to the outliner and you click on the icon for it here, and then you go to details and you can do things like change how the fog works in the world. Fog density. Volumetric fog, most definitely. Want that. And yeah, we'll play with fog later, but basically you can see, oh, it's a foggy day. It's cool. Max fog opacity, we'll set that. It's still pretty thick. Set it back to the defaults, but you can see there's just a little bit of fog in it now. Okay, so that is the world outliner and the details. And again, what I did was I ripped the details panel off the bottom here, and I docked it up next to the outliner. Because to me, I just kind of like having a little bit more real estate on the right-hand side here. Because by default, the outliner is like kind of crowded and small. And the details are also kind of crowded and small. There's usually a lot of details that you play with. And so I like having just like the entire right side of the screen to work on things. Okay, and then to finish up our tour, we start off with the palette. We get to this part here about how to play it, how to use rotate, translate, scale, the outliner, the details panel. We're now going to come to the bottom part of the screen here, which is the content browser. Now, when you launch Unreal Engine 5, by default, the content browser is not shown. Instead, what you have to do is hit space, and then it will hide or show. It's like a little pop-up drawer that appears. I have reset my layout to be UE4, where the content browser is just shown by default. And if I need to make room space, I can just pull it down like that. But usually I have like about this much of my screen real estate devoted to the content browser, just because I'm constantly using it. I don't usually actually want it hidden just because I'm constantly like working with it. But it's up to you. If you like the new system, more power to you. It's all good. So over here in the content browser, you can see these are all the different folders that we have. And you can either browse through them by clicking on starter content this way, or you can click on starter content over here. And this will show you all the different stuff that comes with your game by default. It comes with a couple different sounds, a couple different materials, maybe, I don't know, a couple dozen, 43 materials, particle effects like explosions and things like that. Comes with a couple props, and so like here we got a little chair, and so we can move the chair around, we can rotate the chair, we can scale the chair. That's what I mean. Scaling looks pretty bad most of the time. Like this, I guess this isn't too bad. This kind of looks like a park bench now, but it's pretty obviously stretched, like this, I don't know. I don't think it looks good. Like I said, we very rarely use scaling except for like blocking out things like these walls over here. So yeah, so you can drag out these different options. You can rotate, translate, and scale them around. Add a little foliage if you want. Add some bushes up in here. Drag a couple of these up like that. You see what I'm doing? I'm just left click, drag, and I'm just adding a little bit of foliage to the world, making it some happy little trees or happy little bushes to our world. And you can notice we can walk right through them. But there you go. You got some bushes added. And there's a couple other things. Nice little statue, a little invisible statue almost. A little glass statue. Here. You can see the little statue there. It's almost entirely transparent. That one you can't walk through. The bushes you can. Yep. So that is a content browser. One thing I'm going to ask you guys all to do is to make a folder for your stuff. Whether or not this is the best practice, I don't know. It's probably not. But I like having all of the stuff that I've made in one place so that I can find it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a folder. New folder. I can do it there. Or I can come over here, do a new folder. And I'm going to call it the bill folder. Basically, any materials that I make, sounds that I import, blueprints for coding that I make, I put all of them into the bill folder. And if the bill folder gets too big and obnoxious, then I split it into a materials folder and an audio folder and a, whatever folders I need to keep myself organized. And I just find this to be very convenient because then all the stuff that I've done is in one place. And if I can't remember the name for something, then I can just kind of scroll around like, oh yeah, I called it this. I called it that, So when I refer to you opening up your bill folder, you should probably not call it Bill because your name's probably not Bill. You can make it the Bruce folder or the Noah folder or the Malik folder or whatever. Okay, so just name it after yourself. When I say open up your Bill folder, just mentally substitute your name for it. Open up the Noah folder or whatever. Okay, and that is basically the overview of Unreal Engine 5. So your homework for today is to make a Frosty the Snowman. So the way that I make it, I'm just going to do this real fast, is I'm going to just make a little sphere, and I used Alt and drag to make a copy, and I just drag it straight up. And so I got a little snowman going on here. Looks like a soft serve from Dairy Queen. And now I'm going to add a couple eyes. I'm going to drag out a sphere, and that sphere is way too big, so I'm going to scale that down. And notice that I'm clicking on the white box on the middle. If you click on the white box in the middle, you get uniform scaling. You almost always want that. It's very rare to do, scaling like this. It happens, but it's just fairly rare. So I just clicked and dragged on the white box on the inside, and that gives me a uniform scaling. Come over here to the top. I'm going to just manually type in 0.1, 0.1, 0.1, and that gives me eyes that are about right. And then I'm going to click on the little intersection here. If you click on the intersection, it'll move it in the X and Y directions. And so I'm just going to, maybe I'll turn off grid snapping and see if I can find a good spot for this guy. Materials, I'll give him GoldenEye. That's the video game. There we go. So I dragged out the gold on top of him. Another way you can do this is over here, when you have an object selected, you can click on, under the Materials tab here, you can click on that and choose a different material if you want. But I think the white looks pretty good. I can do concrete. We have a concrete snowman, maybe. Yeah, not really. Doesn't look very good. I'll stick to the white. Okay, so we got this eye here. Alt drag. And we got this eye here. Yeah. And then for a nose, I'm going to use a cone. And again, I'm going to scale this down quite a bit. Move it up, move it right, rotate it. Rotate it over 90 degrees, up, pull it out. And give him, I don't know, give him a gold nose as well. Looking kind of cute. Look at this guy. All right. And then we can give him a smile and so on and so forth. Give him hands. Give him a mysterious hat that brings him to life. You guys understand? So that is going to be your homework for today. So you're going to need to make a snowman. And if you make the snowman funny, if he makes me laugh, you will get extra credit. Control-Shift-S to save all. Add some hands. Last semester, people were adding like fire to it. So under the particles, people were adding like fire to it. So that's under the particles thing. So there you go. So Frosty is enraged right now. I don't know. Add some steam coming off of him as he's melting. One of them had like his hands like were on fire, and he's like, nah, ha, ha, ha. So, pretty cool. Yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. That is basically our class for today. So basically, what you learned today: how to launch Unreal Engine, create a project, and then understanding about the palette on the left-hand side here to drag things out. To play the game. The translate, rotate, and scaling tools. I could probably have the smoke coming forward off of it. Maybe. Yeah, translate, rotate, and scale are just your bread and butter. There you go. It's got everything kind of coming forward now. That's a little bit better. And you got the world outliner over here where you can find things. There's searches available everywhere. So like, if you're just like in like the materials directory, you can search for like grass, and it will pull up the grass material. You can just drag that out real fast. If you're in the world outliner and you don't know where the fire particle effect was, you just search for fire and it will find it for you. Search for like sphere, you can search for like house, you can type house properly, and then double click on it and jump there. So there's search like toolbars everywhere inside of Unreal Engine. There's one there, there's one here, there's one here. They're everywhere. They're actually really effective. They are very good at finding the stuff that you're trying to find, assuming you can type correctly. Okay. He is a fireman. That is correct. He is Olaf or something. I don't know. Okay. Any questions for today, guys? And remember, save all is your friend. Okay. So your homework is going to be to make a snowman. Hopefully a little bit better than mine. But mine's kind of cool looking, so I'm not hating on him too much. When is this due? By tonight? It will be due by the start of next class. So the next class is on Thursday at 1:55 for you guys. So that is when it will be due. Also, post a screenshot of it. If you don't know how to take a screenshot, Windows key Shift S brings up the screenshot tool, and you can just like select the guy just like that, and paste it into Discord, and there you go. There, and then paste it onto Canvas as well. And once you got it up on Canvas on Discord, you'll get a 10 out of 10. Unless you make me laugh, in which case you get an 11 out of 10. Get that extra credit. And there you go. That's about all you have to do every class. Okay? Cool. So I hope you guys are going to have fun this semester. I love teaching game development. It's one of my favorite classes to teach. And it's different every semester. So just depending on what students want, what they need. Hey, I want a weapon that is a grappling hook or something like that. It just changes from semester to semester. And so I always have fun kind of like improvising things for you guys. But these are the basics. You need to know how to look around, how to move around, how to drag things out, how to move them, rotate them, scale them, end, snap to ground. Click on the details. You can edit the details here. You can edit the rotation here. Edit the scaling here. Turn on physics. Play. With physics on, you can kick it. Never read the grappling hook last semester. I'm still simmering on that. All right, then remind me. Let's do it this semester. But that's it for today. Thanks everybody for coming out, and I will see you guys online at 1:55 on Thursday. Peace.